Hey, David Bruce here on an episode of Chordplay, and this is the Chords of Free, and I just made a 3-for-all for Paul Kossoff, and I wanted to follow that with a Chordplay episode, and that way we could look at some of his licks and also some of his chords and rhythm-based work. But Paul Kossoff's, an essential, guitar legend, commonly overlooked, especially these days. I mean, he did pass away, tragically back in 1976, but his music and guitar playing has lived on. And the song, of course, All Right Now, is kind of his shining, legacy. But there's a lot to Paul Kossoff and the music of Free that I think is commonly overlooked. A lot of his chord and rhythm work, really is interesting, and he was taking chances, and trying, different types of chords and, creating these different types of progressions, and it all kind of had this blues rock, style or influence. But there were some really different ways that he put chords and, chord progressions together, and that's what this lesson's going to focus on. Now, Free formed in London, England in 1968 and went on to become one of the most popular bands in the late 60s and early 70s, and there's just this little window of time from 1968 to 1973. That's when they were together. Paul Rodgers eventually left and formed Bad Company, and Paul Kossoff eventually left and formed Backstreet Crawler, which of course was nowhere near as popular as Bad Company, obviously. But it is interesting to notice what both Pauls did after Free. But then, this lesson's going to mainly attack, the music of Free during that little window of time. And they've sold over 20 million albums, worldwide. I think I read somewhere that BMI London announced, I think it was in 2006, that All Right Now had hit 3 million, plays on the radio. And it makes me wonder, I think it's probably getting closer to 4 million plays by now. But definitely Free's very, very popular, and Paul Kossoff's a very important guitarist. So here we go. The opening, that's of course All Right Now from Fire and Water, Free's most popular song, something like this. So basically we're starting with this giant A5 right there, and I've seen people play this with just kind of a simple A5 down here, but if you really listen to the song you can hear it's this big wide open A5 like that, and then it's a D over A right there. So this big A5, and then that kind of 70s approved D over A, kind of that inversion shape, and then back to that big A5. And then you're going to basically hear, the open A, and then it's basically a D add 4 right there. With that open G, you're grabbing F sharp and D right there with that open G string. And then add that A note to change it to D over A. And then go back to that A power chord. And then do it again. Little change right there, it's very subtle, you may not even really notice it in there, but Paul was a master at doing that kind of stuff, just these little tweaks and changes to chords, and it created all this interest in different sounds. A timeless song. Next to the song Mr. Big, which is also from the Fire and Water album, and the band Mr. Big actually did a great cover of this song on their first album, and they also named their band after the song Mr. Big. It's something like this. something like that. So it starts with this really aggressive, blues rock riff right here. And you're literally grabbing the open A, hammering on that B note, then the low E open right there. And then you're grabbing this. So it's a partial E minor 7. You're grabbing the E note there on the D string and then barring that G and D note there on the B and the high E. So you're really just playing 3, notes of that chord, that E, D, and G note. But that's the chord there. And the second time you hear him kind of double hit it like that. Hear this. So right there, it looks like it's E major, but he's actually just holding down the B and the E note there on the A and the D string, and then you're actually just muting that G string. So it looks like I'm holding E major, like a cowboy chord, but I'm really holding these 2 notes down. The low E, the B, and the high E are all open, and that G is just kind of muted. You don't really hear the G string. Big ringing kind of power chord sound. And then you're doing a B power chord like this. So it's basically, the B, F sharp, B, and then the open B. Just watch out for that high E string right there. I'm actually muting that string with my middle finger. Like that. That way I can strum the chord, but I'm not going to hit that open high E. And then you hear this kind of bluesy A, A5 and A6. And then back to that hammer on. Okay, next up is the song I'll Be Creepin', which is from the Free album. This is a really cool song, something like this. Opens with this. So you're basically flirting with B7 technically, and right here he's doing, and right there you're basically grabbing this B note, you're going to grab E and hammer on to F sharp, and then you're grabbing that A. So it's this movement, between that little partial B7 right there. And then you want to do that again, and then right there you're going to hammer on from D to D sharp. End on that B note right there on the D string. So you've got this, it's a partial chord, but the way it moves in that riff is really unusual. I like that. And then you hear this lick. So right there. Slide into that C sharp, grab that E, and then pull off C sharp back to B, and then that low E open. And then you hear this little thing. And right there, that's really crafty. So that's basically a B5, but you're still doing that hammer on like we had with the B7, for the intro. And then you're doing E major over B right here. And it's really interesting because It's going to feel like you're playing an E major chord, but you're on the wrong strings and the wrong frets. But there's your B major. But then when you're doing that, I'm sorry, E major over B. But there's your E major, you know, kind of that little, that major third. And then you've also got that B note in the bass right there. So it's going to feel like E major here, but like I said, you're on the wrong strings and the wrong fret. And you're also hammering on that D sharp to E right there. So I like that part too. Next is Ride a Pony from the Highway album, and this is the chorus section. This is really cool, like this. One more time. Right there, we're doing all these partial chords. There's lots of this kind of R&B, you know, kind of action with the chords here. So we're doing with starting with E right here, and then you're going to hear him slide into this G sharp. You know, so think of some of those Hendrixy, you know, soul and R&B moves, and that's kind of what's happening right there. And then right there, basically hopping over and grabbing this D sharp and F sharp right there. And you want to think of that or relate it to part of a B chord, you know, like the fifth and the major third of B. That's kind of what's happening there. So after you do that major third and fifth of B, then you want to go back to just a B power chord, grab the root, the top part, and then the root, like that. So really slowly here. And then do almost the exact same thing down a whole step. Start in D. Like that. And you're going to end on this, you know, this E, and that's, what, C sharp right there. So you're doing... There you've got this little fill right there, and that's going to take you back to E. Go right back to that E again and do the first part again, and then go back to D right there, and then right there just end on an A major bar chord. So all the way through it kind of slow. And then all the way through it. Really cool guitar part, I love that. Up next is Trouble on Double Time, which is from the Free album, and we prominently have the Hendrix chord here, you know, E7 sharp 9, something like this. Something like that. So we're literally just banging on the Hendrix chord, E7 sharp 9. And then you hear this kind of open position, you know, E, G, E, hammer on pull off, and then you're grabbing G there on the low E string and bending it. Like that. And you hear these kind of percussive, you know, funky strums in there and percussive hits. Hear that move to this. I'm just a sucker for those kind of Hendrixy, psychedelic, you know, funky riffs like that. Cool stuff. Okay, I saved the best for last. This is Oh I Wept from the Fire and Water album. Definitely a deep cut, you know, fan favorite. And this is really cool. Something like this. Actually starts with this little partial E major, and you're basically moving up like that. So you're doing these double stops like that. There's, you know, E major, that's kind of an implied E9 sus4, I guess you could think of it that way. You know, that F sharp and that A note against that E. And then right there, you're basically implying, you know, E minor 7. And then you hear him basically bar across, and you're also grabbing, you know, that F sharp right there. That'd be an E minor 9 when you make it all the way across. So it's these little partial chords, and then he plays more of the chord as you finish that part. Something like that. And then right there, you hear him move back to this. And that's going to be an E minor 6. You could think of it that way. You know, there's your E minor with the E and the G, and then the 6th is that C sharp right there. So this twisted chord right there. You want to strum that twice, and then you're going to basically end up with this extended E major chord, but he basically plays that partial E minor 6, and then a little bit of E major right here, and then a little bit more, and then finish it off with that E there on the B string, and then you do all that again. So it's deceptive the way it's like little pieces, and then he eventually kind of fleshes out more of the chord. Guitar parts like that where it's kind of unexpected and you don't really notice what it is until you sit down and try to play it, and then you realize, like, hey, there's way more going on than what I realized. That's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with the Chords of Free and this double look at Paul Kossoff, you know, the 3-for-all and Chordplay that I put together today. And I really just wanted to attack him head on like this, and I was feeling it. And I initially was just going to do the 3-for-all, and then once I did the lick lesson, I thought, you know what, his chords were great. And then I fell into some of Free's music and started listening to their albums again. And the next thing I knew, I had 2 lessons, you know, 3-for-all and Chordplay. So I want to put both these out there and just see what happens, because he's not really a household name, even though All Right Now is definitely a household song. It seems like everybody knows that song, but a lot of people don't know who played on it, and that's Paul Kossoff. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Net Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.